Okay, so in this next demonstration, we're going to create a blank project so we can start from scratch. I'm not going to do the film and video ones because they're still kind of, it's got a bunch of like unnecessary stuff that you have to modify usually. So I'm just going to go ahead and select the games template, give it a name. We're just going to call this Multicam. And hit the create button. Alright, so here we are in our default project. Nothing special to see here. I am going to take these planes here, select them both, and just kind of scale them out so that we can have a larger working area. Alright, that's good enough. And let's run the game, I guess you can call it. We got some sounds in the background. And I am using the joystick, so I'm able to just kind of walk around, look around, do all sorts of stuff. You can do the controls with the keyboard also. But, to keep this nice and efficient, I'm just demonstrating with the joystick, the gamepad. Hit escape to exit there. And the other thing I want to do is I want to change the way that it plays to the new editor window, the PIE, the Pi. So whenever we do run it, it'll just run in a separate window, and it's a little bit more efficient, effective running it that way. You can get away with other things that involve aspect ratios and things, but that's a video for another day. Anyways, let's go ahead and create our very first sequence. We're going to go into the sequence section here, this little thing that looks like a movie slate. And you'll notice that you have two options. You have level sequence and master sequence. The main difference between these two, they technically both do the same thing, and you can pretty much choose any one of them if you want. But realistically, you should use the basic level sequence, and what that is just applying animation to any set of objects, environments you create. And this is what most people do when they're producing animated content. The thing about the master sequence is that it's a sequence where you can integrate other levels sequences within it. So it's a sequence of sequences. So you're kind of piecing together and compositing multiple different sequences inside of the master one. And that'll come in handy later on once you start getting very, very involved. So for now, let's just do a basic level sequence. Give it a name. And let's just go ahead and create a folder just to be on the, organized side. Sequences, and hopefully I spelled it correctly. We're going to call this boxes. Hit save. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a and what we're looking at is basically something that looks like a traditional timeline. However, it doesn't necessarily work the way traditional nonlinear editor software works. In order to animate something, that item has to be in the sequence. It has to be tracked, because I can add a sequence here, I can do whatever I want, but unless it's part of the track, it's not going to animate. And this is very handy because one of the things that a lot of people do, in fact most people do this, is that they also drop in their cameras in here and they animate their cameras and as part of their sequences. And the thing about that is that it's not the most efficient way of doing this, because you're limiting yourself. Traditionally, yes, you create a storyboard and you lock in your shots and you just kind of go for what you're doing, but this is such a for lack of a better term, an open world environment that you can literally make as many takes as you want from as many angles as you want without necessarily being tied to your storyboard. So you're not that limited anymore. You can change your angles and recreate things as much as you want till you get it perfect. So let's go ahead and drop in a box. here's a cube. We're going to place this cube somewhere in here. Let's go ahead and manipulate this box a little bit. Let's kind of give it the shape of a person, about roughly a person's height. So there we have person 1, and person 1 is sitting on the chair, and we're going to create a second person. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to hold down the Alt key on the keyboard and just drag any of these arrows, and now we have person 2. We're going to rename it by soft double clicking on the outliner. Person 1. Person 2. So just like that, we have all the elements we need to create an animated sequence. So now, how do we get this in here? We're going to select an item. You can visually select it in the viewport itself, or you can click on the item that you want to select in the outliner. So I'm selecting person 1, and I'm going to get person 1 to get off the chair and walk away. And for that, I need to add a track and look for my things and all this other clicky dicky stuff. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go straight to the point. I'm going to go to the outliner, grab that item from there, and just drop it in there, and the software takes care of the rest. All right. So no clicking around. I mean, you can do that if you want, but it's not necessary. So that's the easy way. So what we're going to do here, you'll notice that person 1 has different properties in the transform area: location, rotation, scale. We're only going to worry about the location and rotation items. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to collapse everything, and I'm just going to use this one keyframe thing, which as long as I'm doing it from here, it'll apply a keyframe to all the different layers or the different properties. Or if you don't want to do that, you can basically just apply keyframes just the properties that you want. Okay, so this is a quick demonstration, so we're not too worried about being perfect and accurate. So here we go. We're gonna we have our item select there. We're gonna give it a starting keyframe. Boom, that is set up. Now we're gonna go down a few frames. We're gonna move the character out, give it another keyframe, then we're gonna move a few more frames, we're gonna add another keyframe, and we'll go ahead and do a little bit of a rotation here, and I'll go ahead and add the keyframe again so it'll update, and we're just gonna kind of make them walk off. So add a keyframe, and notice that there's a little in parentheses the word enter there. That's because you can use the enter key on your keyboard to also insert the keyframe, and that's what I'm gonna do going forward. So I'm going to move here and continue to make them walk away. Hit enter. Oh, move the timeline ahead. And hit enter. So now that is pretty much it. Now you can, you know, once you get a hold of your own software here, your own project, you know, you're going to be working with full-on characters and objects and things like that, so be as creative as you want. But we have a sequence. The guy gets up out of the chair and he walks away. Boom. Animated sequence. How about that? Now I can also, you know, if they're talking, I can bring in sounds and just drop them directly on here and manipulate them on the timeline. We're going to get a little bit more advanced in another video. But for the purposes of this demonstration, we're only concerned about creating a basic sequence, okay? Just so we can get our cherry popped. And here we go. We're going to add the other guy. Now, we can go till the cows come home, manipulate them, do all we want, but it's not going to animate unless we add a track specifically targeting that character. So we're going to do that now. So we have person number 2. Drop them in their own timeline there, in their own little layer. Go to the first frame. Drop in a keyframe by hitting enter. And it's not quite aligned, so I'm just going to drag that keyframe. And I'm going to place it on that first frame there. So this guy is going to look at his friend getting up out of the chair, and he's going to be like, huh, what are you doing? All right, so we're going to hit enter there. And at this point, I want him to rotate and look at him. Going to do a little bit of overlapping action there. Okay, so he's like looking at his buddy. He rotates, looks, and hey, where are you going? All right, so now he's gonna get up. So he's getting up, and he's gonna follow. And as he's following, he's going to rotate in that direction. Make sure you hit enter to set your keyframe in there. You can use the keyboard shortcuts WER to switch between the different transform, rotation, and scale manipulators. So I'm hitting W right now to get the transform ones. Hit enter. Maybe a little bit of a rotation there. Make sure you hit enter again just to make sure it stays. And finally, the last keyframe. Okay, that's good enough. We're gonna hit enter, and let's take a look at our sequence. We just made a cinematic. Guy gets up, the other one looks, follows him. Bam. We are professional animators now. Okay, so we have a sequence. I mean, you can add all sorts of things layered in here, special effects, sound, environmental things, lighting effects, all sorts of stuff, and you can control them via motion. The one thing we're not gonna do right now is we're not gonna put a camera in here, because that camera motion then takes over and becomes part of the sequence. We don't want that. We want to work outside of that. So let's kind of ignore this. I'm just gonna get rid of it. No big deal. If I do hit play to show my project in real time, there it is right there. I can walk around it. I can hear the sounds. I can walk around it with the joystick, you know, but it's not doing anything because the entire thing is not like a linear editor. That does not have its own timeline. It's just playing in real time as is, and the sequence is sort of an embedded item that can play when you tell it to play. So what we're going to do now is we are going to create a blueprint, a piece of code that's going to basically allow us to create a trigger to tell this sequence to play, kind of like a director yelling action, you know, and telling his actors to go ahead and start performing. Now these sequence, of course, if that's what you wanted to start from the start, we can just do that, right? So actually, I'm gonna demonstrate that first. So open level blueprint from the little blueprints option. And sometimes you'll get the little event node already from the start. I didn't get it in this particular template, so it's no big deal. We can always add it manually. So we're going to right click. And what we're going to do for this thing is we are looking for the play node, for the sequence player node. PLA. Sequence player, we're getting close. Sequencer. Play. Boom. So that's what we want. And it becomes a lot easier to find them later on. Unfortunately, we probably won't need it anymore. But now if I look for it, it kind of finds it now. So the first time you're looking for it, you might have to dig for it. So here is what we want to happen. And so here is play, and we want our target to be the sequence. So we're looking for the sequence called boxes. Boom. And we're just going to plug that in as the target. It's going to add another in-between node here. It just, the software automatically adds that, you know, to kind of translate whatever needs to be translated in order to make that happen. But now we actually have to tell the system when we want this to happen. So let's see, event begin play. Let's see what happens with the basic event begin play. So there you have it. So basically we just told the software that as soon as it begins playing, to go ahead and play that sequence. All right, let's watch that again. And because we have full control of the joystick and the player controls, we're able to kind of see what's going on within that sequence. So I'm going to hit play again, and I'm going to follow these guys around, do all sorts of fancy stuff with that. So, all right, so we don't necessarily want, for the purposes of this demonstration, to have the sequence play as soon as we start. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this, and I'm going to change it to the number pad number 0 on my keyboard. That way the sequence will play when I tell it to play. So, and that one is easy. So we're just going to right click, num0, boom, there it is. That one is easy to find. So when the number 0 on the keyboard is pressed, we want it to play that sequence. Easy enough. So here we are inside of our sequence. I am able to navigate around the sequence itself. Let me see if I can, adjust my camera. So this is good enough actually for a lot of things, because this gives you full control over your camera movement, where you want your camera to be placed. So let's say I want to record from this angle, and I'm gonna do sort of a pan as my character walks around, and I'm controlling this live with my gamepad. So I have everything set up. I'm gonna hit the 0 on my keyboard, and I'm interactively controlling the camera with the game stick, the gamepad. So now And the reason I work like this is because I don't like having to render out images and worrying about resolutions and exporting in 4K, 8K, all that crap. And on top of that, Unreal doesn't necessarily work very well with exporting sounds that remain synchronized. Okay, you always have to export a bunch of images, recomposite them inside of After Effects or Premiere or something, and then bring in your sounds again and resynchronize them again. It's a pain in the ass. So a much better approach, I think, is to be able to just kind of do everything live, output all your things to an external recorder, because Unreal doesn't seem to be able to produce an actual video file with sound and have it maintain synchronized, which is essential for animation and video production work, filmmaking. So the workaround for that, or at least my workaround, is to use something like a deck link to output the feed out to an external recorder, or you can use one of those game capture cards that people use to stream their video games to YouTube, and output your footage that way live. That way you're getting everything synchronized exactly the way you need it to be. And because you're doing everything live, you get the benefit of not having to wait for renders, and you can switch around to whatever camera angle you want, take as many takes as you want. It's not going to take any extra effort, and then you can go into your nonlinear editor and manipulate those that way. So having said that, let's take a look at how we work with cameras. So here's our sequencer, and we have a way of telling our sequence to play whenever we're ready for it to play. So we're going to do that one more time. So it's just like a director on a film set. We set up our camera the way we want it, and we yell action. But of course we don't yell action, we're just pressing the button, the 0. So action. And the sequence plays when we want it. We record it however we want it. We can add motion to it. And those sequences, assuming that we're recording to an external recorder, it's gonna go out there, and you can have it go out in 4K if you want, no big deal, without having to put any additional strain on your processor. So that's another benefit. So okay, so now let's add some cameras. Let's turn this off for now, and let's bring in under the objects section, under cinematics, Cinecamera Actor. And one of the things about objects, any objects, not just cameras, an easy way to manipulate them and place them wherever you want is to pilot them. And this works with characters, props, anything. So in this case, I'm going to pilot this Cinecamera Actor. And before I do that, I'm going to rename it. I'm going to rename it Cam1. And I'm going to right click on that in the outliner, select pilot Cam1, and now I am able to see through this camera. So whatever that camera can see, I can see. So now let's tell a story. We're gonna start with a 2-shot of these two characters. We don't know what they're doing. They're arguing maybe, or they're talking. And one is going to get up and the other one's and we're going to basically start combining cameras for that. Okay. Now for the camera itself, I'm using the default stuff, 16:9 digital film, blah blah blah. Let's get a little artsy fartsy. Let's do a 2.39 aspect ratio. That's that nice super wide angle that films like The Island is one. So that requires a film back modification. Let me see if I can remember. Let's see, film back. I believe we're gonna need a 35.9 millimeter sensor width and a sensor height of 15 millimeter. Beautiful. So now we have something a little bit more cinematic. I'm not gonna worry too much about focal length and the aperture. I'm gonna change the aperture actually to 1.2. I kind of like that. Slightly, a little slightly blurry. And focal length, we're gonna adjust that. Okay, we're just gonna get a nice little framing here. Oh, 35.9. I kind of accidentally adjusted the sensor width. We don't want that. Okay, so let's adjust the aperture again. You gotta be careful with the focus length and aperture and stuff. You know, this is one of those things that people always talk about, the film look. You know, it's not the film look, it's that dumbass YouTube DSLR. I got a new DSLR look that everybody's using because they got themselves a DSLR camera and they can make their stuff look really blurry, so they abuse the hell out of it. If you look at any real multi-million-dollar movie, they're pretty crisp. They're not blurry, you know. So be careful with that. All right, so I have a nice little angle that I like. I'm gonna go ahead and stick with that. This is gonna be my very first shot, and I'm gonna stop piloting the camera. Right click, select stop piloting. Because the camera is selected, I am able to see that preview there, and I can leave that preview on if I click that little pin preview, but I'm not going to do that. Let's see here. So there's my camera, and if I just select that camera and do the duplicate function by holding down the Alt key, I could just grab another copy of that. This camera, of course, because it's just a direct duplicate, is going to maintain the same settings. So usually I recommend getting all your settings out of the way first before you start duplicating. Otherwise, if you start adding new cameras, then you're gonna have to do everything from scratch. And even though it's not that much, it's kind of hard to remember all your settings, especially film back. You don't want to switch film backs in the middle of the same scene unless you're going for something super artistic, which nobody really does that. So this camera here is going to be at this angle somewhere. I'm gonna go ahead and pilot this one so I can get the right angle. Okay, so if I wanted to, I can go ahead and adjust my focal lengths and apertures and stuff like that. Those are things that can be specific to your sequence. So more of an over-the-shoulder type of shot. Okay, so we have that. Let's do a third camera. Oops. Hold down the Alt key as you drag. And this is going to be more of a wide shot. So let's go ahead and pilot this camera. Find our talent. Okay, so this is just going to be a wide shot. Now these are going to be steady cameras. Again, you can create an additional sequence with the cameras in those sequences moving if you want to be able to cut to a moving camera that you are not directly controlling. Again, if you want to be able to control the camera yourself, stick to the player camera, because you can just manipulate that with the joystick. You might even be able to attach it to a virtual reality tracker and just kind of, you know, manipulate your camera that way. All sorts of good stuff. But for now, we're just going to play around with the static camera placements. And that's good enough. So we have our 3 cameras. Let me see here. And we'll use this little preview thing. So camera 1, camera 2, and camera 3. All right. So how do we make this functional? Let's go to the blueprint for this level. And it's going to be the same thing. We're going to attach camera 1 to number 1, camera 2 to number 2, and so on. So we're going to go to num 1, boom. And this time we're going to use a node called set view target. And I think it's actually set view target with blend. And I'll show you why. And this is probably not something you're going to use, or you're going to need to, or you might, but it'll give you some ideas. Let me know if you end up using that. So we're going to right click, set view target with blend. That context sensitive thing, man, it gets on my nerves sometimes. Sometimes it's useful. So when number 1 is pressed on the number pad, the set view target with blend. So what are our targets? So we're going to start with the player controller, okay? Wherever, that's always a good idea to use the player controller, actually, unless you're blending. You can always use another camera, blend one camera to the other, okay? But in this case, we are going to use the view of the player controller. And I recommend you kind of just stick to that, really. Most projects, really, most films, you just cut. You're never going to do any actual blending. So it's not going to look too wacky. I mean, for video games, it's great, because on video games, the player will be, you'll be actually interacting with the game, playing, and then you'll switch to a cinematic, and it gives a kind of cool transition between the game and the cinematic. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So we're going to take the camera 1 from the outliner and just drop it in here. It's going to create that object that we need to use as a new target. So the old target, or the original target, the current target, is the player controller. The new target is going to be the camera 1, and this all happens by changing the target with a blend. And right now the blend time is 0, so it's going to be an instant cut. So from target 1 to target 2 when you press the number 1. That's all that is saying. I mean, it's very easy, really. I'm going to go ahead and hit play so you can see it in action. So when I press the number 1, boom, now we have that view right there. And what you're looking at here is that ball. That ball is the actual player pawn. That's kind of getting in your way. There's ways of hiding that. You just got to go in here and just tell it to hide during the game, and no big deal. Or you could just leave it there so you can kind of get an idea of where that camera thing is, and just kind of move it out of the way. Let's see here. Because you can control it. It's a controllable object. That's the player. So we just move it out of the way. And now, you'll be able to switch around. But we don't have the other camera set up, so we can't see that. So let's go ahead and do that. So now we can have all 3 cameras working. Right click, num 2. Right click, num 3. And we're going to save some time and just copy these 2. Copy, paste. Paste, connect this to that, connect this to that, just kind of make them look pretty. And we'll bring in the cameras. Camera 2 goes here, and it is connected to that. And the camera 3 goes on there, and it is connected to that. Boom, we're done. Let's take a look at it. Camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, and it's all being controlled live whenever we want it. Alright. Now we could switch back to the player camera. We're not going to worry about that. I'm going to let you sort that out. But it's the same exact thing. Let's just reverse it. So we're going to hit... I'm going to move this player out of the way. So it's way out of the camera shot. Okay, you tell that idiot extra to move out of the shot. And now we go 1, 2, 3. So let's tell the story. We'll go to camera 1. We're going to hit 0. You know, that's our action button. Camera 2, camera 3, camera 2, 1. We lost it. There we go. I should have made a wider angle maybe. I don't know. But here we go. Now this time let's switch to our wide angle. Let's say we want a shot that starts with the wide angle first. Now we're going to yell action. We're going to switch to that. And now we're left with an empty table. Let's try that again. Hit the 0 to start the action. There we go. And you could just record as many takes as you want and use as much as you want. We're not rendering anything out to the system. We laid out our sequence, and we're basically switching our cameras whenever we want, however many times as we want, to give us the right footage. And you kind of editing on the fly, and you're getting multiple takes, and sometimes you'll get lucky and you'll get like the perfect sequence. If you plan this properly, or I mean, that's the whole point of this. You don't have to plan too much. You can have different camera angles that you can play with. I can come in here and let's see here. I'm going to take camera 3. Alright, so I'm going to adjust camera 3. So camera 3 is back here. I'm going to adjust camera 2. So camera 2 gives me more of this kind of a view. And camera 1, what does that look like? That's fine. Okay, so let's play with it again. Let's hit our play button. And let's start with this view now. I'm going to hit action. Oh, I need to be able to activate this window first. So now I'm going to hit. Oh, we'll switch to camera 1. Sorry. Get rid of our player. We're in cinematic mode. Camera 2, camera 3. Okay, we're in good shape. So now we're going to yell action. Here we got movement. Camera 2, camera 3. Boom. Hey, we're telling stories now. Let's try that again. Now let's start with the wide angle first. We're going to go action, close up, further away, and now we're left with an empty thing. Perfect. Now we're telling stories. Now what if we want to be able to have an additional one? You can cut into that, but that's too much. I mean, we have, if you set your player camera to also have that aspect ratio and everything, you could use the player camera to create your pans and things like that. So when we hit play, you could use the player camera to control panning and stuff like that. You just got to adjust the camera of the player itself to have the aspect ratio. So that's no big deal. Alright, so the other thing I wanted to show you was on the level blueprint, and we're using this blend function here. Okay, so I'm gonna go to I'm going to use the number 1. When we switch to camera 1, I want it to blend from the controller to camera 1. I want it to take, let's take 5 seconds to do that. Let's hit play. And this is what this looks like, and you're gonna see a transition between the player camera and the camera one, and even the aspect ratio changes. And because that player is in the way, it's gonna be there, it's gonna be showing that. We probably don't want that, but of course, I mean, it's kind of an interesting transition. You could also blend the cameras between camera 1 and camera 2 and just kind of adjust the delay there, so you have like a little bit of movement if you want. And of course, you can also switch from one of the camera ones to the player controller by just kind of switching your targets, if that's what you want. Maybe camera 4 goes back to a moving camera that you're controlling the pan. But that's pretty much it. Now you have the skills you need to be able to produce a sequence, record it with multiple cameras, and take as many takes as you want. So enjoy.